On my 84th birthday, my daughter slammed her hand on the table and screamed, "Give the house to my husband." In that moment, I realized she didn't see me as her father anymore, just an obstacle standing between her and my home. Those words hit me harder than the heart attack I survived 10 years ago. I'm 82 years old. I've lived through recessions, floods, and the kind of betrayals only a man in business can know. But nothing prepared me for the day my own flesh and blood reduced my life's work to a piece of paper for her husband to sign. What I did next shocked the entire family. My name is Roland Whitaker, and for more than 5 decades, I worked as a civil engineer in Denver, Colorado. I built bridges across rivers, highways, through the mountains, and water systems that kept entire neighborhoods alive during droughts. I didn't grow up with money, but I believed in hard work and faith, and it paid off. By the time I retired, my wife Margaret and I had paid off our 3-story brick house in Cherry Creek, one of the oldest and wealthiest neighborhoods in Denver. Today, that house is valued at more than $4.5 million. But to me, it's not about the money. It's about the walls that heard my children's first cries, the dining table where we held Sunday dinners, and the roses Margaret planted every spring. When she passed 6 years ago, I swore I would never leave that house. It was the last place her laughter still lingered. My daughter Marissa doesn't see it that way. She's 55 now, polished to perfection, always dressed in tailored suits, driving a brand new Mercedes-Benz GLS like she's some kind of royalty. To the outside world, she's the picture of success. But to me, she's become cold practical and more concerned with appearances than relationships. And then there's her husband, Victor. Smooth as silk, sharp as a knife. He's a lawyer who specializes in estate planning, the kind of man who knows every loophole in the law and doesn't mind using it. For 20 years, he smiled at me across holiday dinners, shaking my hand while measuring me up like I was just another case file. I could almost stomach their ambitions if it weren't for the way they treat me as if my home, my legacy, my sanctuary were already theirs. They act like I'm a squatter in my own life, holding up their future by daring to keep breathing. That morning when Marissa said those words, "Give the house to my husband," my coffee cup shook in my hand. I stared at her, and for the first time I didn't see my little girl who used to sit on Margaret's lap, braiding her doll's hair. I saw a woman who had let greed eclipse love. Do you know what it feels like when your child treats your home as if you're already gone? It's a wound deeper than any illness. I didn't answer her right away. I just looked around the living room, the grand piano Margaret loved, the oil painting we bought in Florence on our 25th anniversary. The fireplace where Ethan, my grandson, used to fall asleep after playing in the snow. Every corner whispered of a life built with sacrifice. And here was my daughter, demanding I hand it over like a set of car keys. No, I thought. Not while I'm still alive. I may be old, but I am not invisible. And I am certainly not powerless. This is where my story begins, with betrayal at my own table, and the decision that would set me on a path of defiance, faith, and freedom. Have you ever had your own child treat your home as if it was already theirs? Tell me in the comments where you're listening from, because this is not just my story. It could be any parent's nightmare. After Marissa stormed out that morning, leaving her words like broken glass on the floor, I sat alone in the silence of that great house. At 82, silence can be both a comfort and a curse. The house creaked the way old houses do, as if it too was weary from holding so many memories. I walked slowly into the sunroom, Margaret's favorite place. The rocking chair was still there with the small cushion she embroidered herself. Every morning since she passed, I've sat in that chair, closed my eyes, and prayed. Lord, I whispered that day, give me strength not to grow bitter. Give me wisdom to see what is true, and courage to do what is right. Faith has been my anchor. Without it, I would have drowned years ago when Margaret's heart stopped beating one quiet winter night. It was my Bible and my prayers that pulled me out of the darkness then. And I thought foolishly, perhaps, that my children would honor that same faith, that same legacy of love. But Marissa, she doesn't understand. To her, the house is just square footage, property tax, and market value. She speaks in numbers and contracts while I speak in memories and prayers. That same afternoon, Ethan, my grandson, dropped by. He didn't come in a luxury car or wearing a tailored suit. He pulled up in his old Ford pickup, mud splattered on the tires, the bed full of tools and plants. Ethan is 27, works as a landscape architect, and has his grandmother's gentle smile. Grandpa, he said, hugging me carefully, I brought some hydrangeas. Thought we could plant them by the south fence. It was exactly what I needed. While my daughter was busy plotting paperwork, my grandson was busy planting life. We spent the rest of the day in the garden. Ethan's hands deep in the soil, mine shaking a little as I handed him tools. He talked about a new project he was designing for the city park. His eyes lit up the way mine used to when I was sketching bridges on the back of napkins. Grandpa, he said, you remind me every day why I chose this career. You and Grandma taught me that building something that lasts is the only way to live. I swallowed hard. If only his mother could see what I saw, that a home is not just bricks and wood, but a living testament of the people who built it. When the sun dipped low, we sat on the porch, sweat on our brows, dirt under our nails. Ethan poured me a glass of water and said, "Don't worry about Mom. She gets carried away, but I'll always be here for you." And in that moment, I thanked God again. Because though one branch of the family tree was rotting with greed, another was blooming with loyalty. Later that night, as I took my pills and set them neatly beside a glass of water, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Wrinkles, white hair, a body slower than it once was. But behind the eyes, still sharp, still aware, still mine. And I promised myself I will not be bullied. Not by my daughter, not by her husband, not even by the slow betrayal of age. The Bible says in Proverbs, the righteous are as bold as a lion. I repeated those words to myself as I turned off the light. Tomorrow I knew Marissa would be back with a new argument, a new excuse, a new piece of paper. She was relentless like that. But tomorrow I would be ready not with anger, but with faith. Because sometimes the only way to protect what's sacred is to stand firm, even if it means standing alone. The next week, Marissa returned. She never came empty-handed anymore. That day, she marched in carrying a box from Williams-Sonoma like a trophy. "Daddy," she said sweetly, "I thought you could use new cookware. Your pans are so outdated." Outdated. That's her favorite word for anything she wants to replace, people included. She set the box on the marble countertop Margaret had picked 30 years ago, and then Victor followed her in, dressed in one of his custom Tom Ford suits, smelling of expensive cologne leather briefcase in hand. He looked less like a son-in-law and more like a banker coming to repossess something. "Roland," he said smoothly, "we need to talk about estate planning." I stiffened. He wasted no time. Marissa poured herself sparkling water from the fridge, acting casual. Daddy, it's really just about making life easier for you. This house is enormous. 3 floors, 6 bedrooms, 4 baths. Do you know what Zillow lists it at? 4.5 million. Imagine the taxes, the maintenance. It's too much for you. Victor clicked open his briefcase and laid down papers like a magician revealing cards. This is a deed of gift. If you transfer the house to me, you'll still live here. Nothing changes in your day-to-day. But we avoid probate estate tax inheritance issues. It's the smartest financial move. I looked down at the documents. Black ink, neat paragraphs, a space for my shaky signature at the bottom. It was all so clean, so final. Victor, I said slowly, I didn't build water systems and dams for 40 years just to hand my home over like a used car title. He smiled unfazed. Roland, you misunderstand. This protects you. Marissa chimed in, her tone a little sharper now. Daddy, you don't need this big house. We could move in, take care of everything. You'd never have to worry again. I almost laughed. Her idea of care was having me sit quietly in a corner while she and Victor redecorated with imported Italian furniture. I'm doing fine, I said, folding the papers. And I don't sign things I don't fully trust. For the first time, Marissa's smile cracked. Her eyes narrowed, her lips pursed. She gathered the papers back into the briefcase with a little too much force. Think about it, she said coldly. That night, as the house grew quiet, I sat in the study staring at Margaret's portrait. What would you do, Maggie? I whispered. The answer came the next day when Ethan arrived, mud still fresh on his boots. He noticed the papers stacked neatly on my desk. What's this? He asked, flipping through. His face darkened as he read. Your mother and Victor, I explained. They want the house signed over. Ethan shut the folder hard. Grandpa, don't you dare. I overheard them last night. He hesitated, shifting on his feet. They were in the kitchen arguing. Victor said if you won't sign, they'll find a doctor to declare you incompetent. Then Mom can become your guardian and take control of the estate. For a moment, my chest burned hotter than any disease could make it. My own daughter, my little girl who once made mud pies in the backyard, plotting to strip me of my rights. They think I'm senile, I asked quietly. No, Ethan said firmly. But Victor claims at your age, with your health, it wouldn't be hard to get a doctor to sign off. I leaned back in the leather chair, gripping the armrests. The room felt colder, darker. All the trophies, the framed diplomas, the family photos, suddenly they looked like evidence of a man on trial. Ethan knelt beside me. Grandpa, listen to me. They're wrong. You're sharp as ever. Don't let them scare you. I put a hand on his shoulder. Thank you, son. You've given me more than comfort, you've given me clarity. If they want a war over this house, then they'll see I'm not as weak as they think. When Ethan left, I stayed in the study long after midnight. I didn't pray for wealth or for health that time. I prayed for strength to fight my own blood without losing my soul, because now it was clear this wasn't just about property. It was about dignity. And I would rather die standing in my own doorway than live one day as a prisoner in my daughter's plan. My 83rd birthday was supposed to be quiet. I would have been content with a piece of chocolate cake and a phone call from Ethan. But Marissa had other plans. Daddy, she said, a week earlier, we've made reservations at the Capitol Grill. Private dining room? Just family. I knew better than to expect sentiment. If Marissa was involved, there was an agenda, Still that evening, Ethan pulled up in his old Ford truck dressed in a suit that didn't quite fit, but showed he'd tried. "Happy birthday, Grandpa," he said, handing me a wrapped box. Inside was a leather wallet embossed with my initials. "Your old one was falling apart," he said, smiling. It was thoughtful, genuine, the kind of gift money couldn't improve. When we arrived at the restaurant, the first thing I noticed was how Marissa and Victor were dressed. She in a glittering black dress with diamond earrings that caught every chandelier light. In another one of his tailored suits, Rolex flashing on his wrist. They looked less like family and more like royalty waiting to preside over a subject. Daddy, Marissa said, giving me a quick air kiss. "You look wonderful for 83. Victor shook my hand firmly. "Congratulations, Roland." Still sharp as ever. We sat at a round table, white tablecloth, crystal glasses. The waiter brought wine I didn't order. Marissa smiled as she waved him off. "Don't worry, Daddy, we've taken care of everything tonight." The first course came lobster bisque, rich and creamy, then steaks perfectly seared. It was a spread that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly paycheck, but I couldn't taste any of it. I knew the feast was bait. Halfway through dessert, Marissa set her fork down with a clink that cut through the chatter. The room quieted. "Daddy," she began, her voice louder than necessary. "We need to discuss the future." I stiffened. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. Victor leaned forward, folding his hands like he was in court. "Roland, we've been patient, but it's time. You can't maintain that house anymore. It's a liability. The logical step is to transfer the deed." I wiped my mouth with the linen napkin. "We've already discussed this. I'm not signing anything." Marissa's eyes flared. She glanced at Victor, then back at me. And then, as if something inside her snapped, she slammed her palm on the table. "Give the house to my husband." The words exploded in the dining room, echoing against the polished wood walls. Conversations around us stopped. Forks froze mid-air. Every eye in that room turned toward us. Ethan shot up, his face red. "Mom, sit down." But she didn't. She jabbed her manicured finger in my direction. "Stop pretending, Daddy. You're old, you're sick, and you don't need that house anymore. Why cling to it? We all know you don't have long left. Just sign it over and stop being stubborn." I felt the blood drain from my face. Not from shame, from rage. My own daughter on my birthday in a public restaurant announcing to strangers that I was already half dead. Victor reached for her arm. "Marissa, this isn't the time." "No," she snapped. "I'm tired of tiptoeing. He's clinging to that house like it's going to keep him alive. He's a wreck who doesn't even see we're trying to help." The waiter appeared nervously at the edge of the room, as if unsure whether to intervene. The other diners whispered stealing glances. I wanted to speak, but my throat closed. For the first time in my life, words abandoned me. Ethan moved behind my chair, resting a steady hand on my shoulder. "Come on, Grandpa," he said softly. "Let's go." I stood slowly, ignoring Marissa's furious stare, ignoring Victor's muttered apology, ignoring the whispers of strangers. We walked out of that glittering restaurant under 1,000 eyes. My birthday had become a spectacle. In the car, Ethan gripped the wheel so tightly his knuckles whitened. "I'm so sorry, Grandpa. I didn't think she'd humiliate you like that." I stared out the window at the Denver skyline. "Don't apologize for her son. She showed me exactly who she is, and I know what I have to do." Because that night the decision crystallized. I would not wait for them to strip me of my dignity. I would act. And when I did, they wouldn't see it coming. Would you have walked out of that restaurant the same way I did, with everyone staring? If you're still here with me, type 1 in the comments, so I know you're listening. The morning after that disastrous birthday dinner, I sat at the kitchen table with the unopened gift bag Marissa had left behind. A bottle of Dom Perignon peeked out, probably meant to show off her taste more than to celebrate my life. I pushed it aside. I had no appetite for champagne. What I wanted was clarity. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. Harvey Dawson, my old friend from the engineering days, who later became a notary and estate consultant. His voice was rough but warm. "Roland, haven't heard from you since Margaret's funeral." "How are you holding up?" I told him everything. Marissa's demands, Victor's papers, the birthday humiliation. He was quiet for a long time. "Roland," he finally said, "do not sign a thing. They're pushing you toward a deed of gift, which leaves you with no protection. The minute you put your name on that, the house is gone. If you want to keep control, you need to act, not react." "What do you mean by act?" I asked. "First," Harvey said, "protect yourself legally. Get a competency evaluation from a neutral doctor. If they try to claim you're unfit, you'll have ironclad proof. Second, if you're serious about not leaving the house to them, consider selling it yourself. Beat them at their own game. Selling the house." The words tasted bitter. But then I remembered Marissa's voice in the restaurant. "We all know you don't have long left." The decision settled in my chest like a heavy stone. That afternoon, Harvey introduced me to Dr. Leonard Briggs, a respected psychiatrist. I drove myself to the appointment, slow, careful, but alone, to prove a point. Dr. Briggs asked me questions, ran memory tests, problem-solving exercises. At the end, he looked me straight in the eye. "Mr. Whitaker, you are as sharp as any 83-year-old I've seen. I'll prepare a full report of competency." I thanked him. It wasn't just paper. It was armor. The next step was harder. I called Sophia Morales, a realtor Harvey recommended. She arrived 2 days later in a crisp navy suit, carrying a tablet and a camera. "Mr. Whitaker," she said, "after touring the property, this house is stunning. Original woodwork, spacious lot, Cherry Creek address. At full market, it could list for $4.5 million. But if you want a fast, clean sale, we should start at 4.2. I hesitated. "It's worth more." "Yes," she said gently. "But the real value isn't in the walls. It's in who controls them. Do you want to wait months while your daughter pressures you, or do you want freedom?" Her words struck me. Freedom. That was what I wanted more than money. I agreed. Sophia staged the house, photographed every room, and within a week, she had 2 interested buyers, both young families, both eager to put down roots. I chose a couple with 2 little boys. They reminded me of Margaret and me when we first bought the place, young, hopeful, ready to build a life. The night before signing, I walked through each room slowly. The dining room where Margaret burned her first roast. The staircase where Marissa once tripped and cried until I carried her upstairs. The study where Ethan used to sit on my lap doodling while I checked blueprints. I placed my hand on the wall and whispered, "Thank you." This wasn't surrender. This was taking back control. By selling it myself, I was tearing the ground out from under Marissa and Victor's schemes. When Ethan came by the next day, I told him plainly, "Son, the house will be gone in a week. I've found a family who deserves it, and I've changed my will. Everything I have left, will go to you." His eyes widened. "Grandpa, you don't have to." "I do," I said firmly. "Because you're the only one who stood by me not for what I own, but for who I am." He hugged me tight, dirt still on his hands from the garden. In that embrace, I felt the strength of generations, the past slipping away, the future still rooted in loyalty. And for the first time in months, I slept peacefully, knowing I had struck the first blow in this war. The night before the closing, I couldn't sleep. I wandered the halls of the Cherry Creek house with only the lamplight to guide me, every creak of the floorboards whispering Margaret's name. Her perfume still lingered faintly in the cedar closet. Her old recipe cards were tucked in a drawer by the kitchen. This was more than a house. It was a cathedral of memory. At 2 a.m, I sat down in Margaret's rocking chair in the sunroom. For years I had prayed there, but that night my prayer was different. "Lord," I whispered, "I've held on long enough. This house is yours now, not mine. If selling it is the way to protect my dignity, then give me peace to let go. Let me leave with faith, not fear." As I prayed, a strange calm settled over me. The fear that had gripped me for weeks loosened. My breathing slowed. My hands, usually shaking from age, steadied. I knew then that I wasn't surrendering. I was choosing. The next day, Ethan drove me to the closing. He wore the same suit from my birthday dinner, still a little too big on his shoulders. "You ready, Grandpa?" he asked. "As ready as a man can be," I replied. At the realtor's office, papers were stacked neatly on the polished oak table. Sophia greeted me warmly. "Mr. Whitaker, this is the couple I told you about, James and Claire. They've brought their boys." The boys peeked out shyly from behind their mother, clutching toy cars. Something inside me softened. This was right. A home should be filled with young voices, not haunted by bitterness. We signed. My hand didn't tremble. With each stroke of the pen, I felt chains breaking. When it was done, James shook my hand firmly. "We'll take good care of it, sir," he promised. I believed him. The check was substantial, $4.2 million, wired directly into my account. But more valuable than the money was the freedom. Within weeks, I found a modest cabin on the edge of Estes Park, overlooking a quiet lake surrounded by pines. The property cost less than a fifth of the sale price, but to me it was priceless. No marble countertops, no grand staircase, just a porch, a fireplace, and peace. Ethan came every weekend, planting flowers around the cabin. "Grandma would have loved this view," he said one morning as the sun rose over the water. I nodded, holding my coffee, the warmth of it grounding me. Harvey helped me update my will. "Everything to Ethan," I said firmly. "Not even a portion to Marissa?" he asked carefully. "Not a penny," I said. Blood does not excuse betrayal. She forfeited her inheritance the moment she tried to strip me of my life's work. The new will was signed, notarized, sealed. For the first time in years, I felt untouchable. One evening, as the lake reflected the golden sky, Ethan sat beside me on the porch. "Grandpa," he said, "Mom's going to lose her mind when she finds out." I smiled faintly. "Let her. This isn't about punishment, son. It's about protecting what's sacred." I opened my Bible and read aloud from Isaiah, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you." Ethan listened quietly, his hand resting on the wooden railing. "Grandpa," he said softly, "you're stronger than anyone I know." But it wasn't strength. It was faith. Faith that letting go didn't mean losing. Faith that dignity was worth more than any mansion. As night fell over Estes Park, I looked out at the still water. For the first time in months, I felt the full weight of peace, and I knew deep down the real battle was only beginning. But now I had God, I had Ethan, and I had nothing left to fear. News travels fast in families, especially when money is involved. Marissa didn't even call me first. She drove straight from Denver to Estes Park the moment she found out the Cherry Creek house had been sold. I was sitting on the porch, watching the water ripple against the shore, when her Mercedes GLS screeched into the gravel driveway. She stepped out in heels, far too sharp for mountain roads, slamming the door so hard the birds scattered from the pines. "Daddy!" she shouted, storming up the steps. Her diamond earrings caught the afternoon light like daggers. "What have you done?" I didn't move. I just sipped my coffee. "I did what you wanted, Marissa. I got rid of the house." Her face twisted. "You sold it to strangers. That house was supposed to stay in the family." "No," I said evenly. "It was supposed to be mine until I decided otherwise." And I decided. Her voice cracked into a shriek. "Do you have any idea what you've thrown away? Do you know how much Victor and I cut her off?" "Yes, Marissa. I know exactly how much you wanted it. And that's the problem." For a moment, she looked at me as if I'd struck her. Then her expression hardened into something colder than I'd ever seen. "You've betrayed me, Daddy. Your only daughter. After everything I've done for you." I laughed bitterly. "Everything you've done for me, you mean the birthday dinner, where you humiliated me in front of a room full of strangers, or the legal documents you tried to shove under my pen?" She froze. The truth stung more than any slap could. "Get off my porch," I said finally. "This cabin is mine. You have no claim here." Her heels clattered down the steps as she stormed back to her car. But before she drove away, she rolled down the window and spat words that pierced deeper than her shrieks. "You'll regret this. Victor will make sure of it." And she was right about one thing. Victor moved fast. Within a week, I received notice of a petition for guardianship, filed in the Denver County Court. The claim that I was no longer competent to manage my affairs due to advanced age and declining health. I sat in Harvey's office with the papers spread out in front of me. The legal language was sharp, impersonal. To them, I wasn't Roland Whitaker, engineer, husband, father, grandfather. I was just the respondent. "They're arguing you're unfit to manage property," Harvey explained. "If they win, Marissa becomes your guardian. She'll control every dollar, every decision." I clenched my fists over my dead body. "Not if we play this right," Harvey said calmly. "You already have the competency report from Dr. Briggs. That's solid evidence. But we'll need more witnesses who can testify your capable records of your recent decisions. And Roland, you'll have to show up in court. Strong." I nodded. My body was old, but my resolve was steel. That night, Ethan came by with takeout Chinese spreading cartons across my small cabin table. "Grandpa, Mom's lost it," he said. "She told the family you're senile, that Victor's just trying to protect you." I opened a fortune cookie and read the slip aloud. "Strength comes from standing alone." I smirked. "Fitting, isn't it?" Ethan leaned forward. "You won't be alone, Grandpa. I'll testify. I'll tell the judge what they've done, what I've seen. They can't take this from you." I put a hand on his. "I know, son. But this isn't just about me keeping control. It's about proving to your mother and the whole world that I am not finished. My mind, my faith, and my dignity are intact." As the sun dipped behind the Rockies, I felt a fire I hadn't felt in years. They wanted a battle, then they would get one. And in that courtroom, I would show them that a man of faith, a man of principle, does not surrender just because his hair has gone white. The Denver County Courthouse smelled of old wood and cold stone, the kind of place where history lingered in the walls. I sat at the long oak table beside Harvey, my lawyer, while Marissa and Victor sat opposite with their team, 3 suits, a stack of folders, and smug smiles that made my blood boil. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and an expression that revealed nothing, entered and took her seat. Case number 45712, petition for guardianship of Roland Whitaker. That was me, reduced to a case file. Victor rose first, smooth as always. Your Honor, we are here because Mr. Whitaker, at 84 years old and suffering from emphysema, has demonstrated diminished capacity to manage his affairs. Our only concern is his welfare. We ask the court to appoint his daughter Marissa as his legal guardian. His words dripped with false compassion. I could almost hear the dollar signs ringing behind them. Then Harvey stood. His voice was calm, firm. Your Honor, this case is not about welfare. It is about greed. Mr. Whitaker is fully competent as demonstrated by an independent psychiatric evaluation. What's at stake is not his health, but his freedom. The judge nodded. Proceed with evidence. Victor's side paraded their so-called witnesses, first a neighbor from Cherry Creek, who claimed I seemed forgetful. A doctor friend of Victor's, who hinted that emphysema affected judgment. Even Marissa herself, who painted me as a lonely old man, clinging to memories, unable to manage daily life. I sat still, fists tight, as she said, "My father doesn't even remember to take his medication unless someone reminds him. He sold our family home for far below market value. These are not the actions of a competent man." When Harvey rose for cross-examination, he asked only one question. Marissa, who benefits financially if your father is declared incompetent? Her lips pressed into a thin line. I only want what's best for him. Answer the question. She faltered. Well, I suppose I would as his guardian. The judge's eyes narrowed. The truth had slipped. Then it was our turn. Harvey called Dr. Briggs, who testified that I was of sound mind. Fiona, my nurse, took the stand and described how I managed my medication regimen, meticulously keeping a logbook she herself had checked. Then Ethan, my grandson, her son, walked up nervously, but his voice rang clear. My mom says Grandpa's confused, but I've spent every week with him this past year. He remembers everything, my projects, my deadlines, even my dog's name. He's more alert than half the people I know. The only thing he forgets, he added with a small smile, is to let me win at chess. Laughter rippled through the courtroom. Even the judge's lips twitched. Finally, Harvey called me to testify. I rose slowly, cane in hand, and took the oath. My lungs ached, but my spirit was steady. Mr. Whitaker, Harvey asked, why do you oppose this guardianship? I looked straight at the judge. Because I am not done living my life. I may be 84, but my mind is clear. I chose to sell my house because I will not be bullied. I changed my will because my daughter forgot the meaning of family. And I will not surrender my dignity to anyone, not even my own blood. My voice cracked, but I pressed on. Your Honor, faith has carried me through darker times than this. When my wife died, I prayed for strength, and I survived. I am still here. I am still capable, and I will not be declared dead while I'm still breathing. The courtroom was silent. You could have heard a pin drop. The judge leaned forward. I've heard enough. She shuffled her papers, then looked directly at Marissa and Victor. It is the decision of this court that the petition for guardianship is denied. Mr. Whitaker remains the sole authority over his estate and affairs. Furthermore, I find this petition to be filed in bad faith. Be advised that further attempts of this nature may result in sanctions. Marissa gasped. Victor's jaw tightened. Harvey placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. I exhaled for the first time in weeks. As I walked out of that courtroom, cane tapping on the marble floor, I didn't just feel like an old man who'd won a case. I felt like a soldier who had reclaimed his battlefield. They tried to strip me of my name, my will, my freedom, but I stood and I fought and I won. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just a legal victory. It was a warning. I had shown them and everyone watching that Roland Whitaker was not a man to be written off. Victory doesn't taste like champagne at my age. It tastes like quiet mornings, coffee on the porch, and the sweet relief of knowing no one can sign away your life while you sleep. The courthouse fight was over, but its echoes carried back into our family like a thunderclap. Marissa stopped calling. No surprise there. But word spread, cousins, old friends, even neighbors from Cherry Creek whispered about how she had tried to strip her own father of his rights. For a woman who prided herself on reputation, that shame cut deeper than any ruling. Victor, slick as ever, retreated into silence. He no longer swaggered into my life with contracts and folders. Ethan told me one evening over dinner, stepdad's embarrassed grandpa. He said he didn't marry Mom to get dragged into lawsuits against her own father. I raised my glass of iced tea. Better late than never. But Marissa, she grew bitter. I heard from Ethan that she complained to anyone who would listen, that I had betrayed her, humiliated her, that I let outsiders, meaning Harvey, Fiona, even Ethan himself, turn me against her. She couldn't understand that it wasn't outsiders who did this. It was her own greed, her own choices. Meanwhile, life by the lake settled into a rhythm. Fiona cooked in the mornings, humming as she moved around the kitchen. Ethan came by every Saturday sometimes with blueprints for his landscaping projects, sometimes just with a bag of groceries and that steady loyalty only a grandson can give. One afternoon, I sat by the water, watching the sunlight dance across the ripples. Ethan was repairing the dock shirt sleeves, rolled up muscles taut with youth. Fiona brought us lemonade, her freckles glowing in the late-day sun. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't dared hope for: peace. Grandpa Ethan called, wiping sweat from his brow. "You know Mom won't forgive you, right?" I nodded slowly. "And I won't forget what she tried to do, but forgiveness. Forgiveness is between her and God. My task is to live the days I have left with dignity." Fiona sat beside me, her hand brushing mine just briefly, like a whisper. "You've already won more than the case," she said softly. "You've won your freedom." She was right. No luxury car, no mansion in Cherry Creek, no polished social circle could match the luxury of independence. I had traded square footage for serenity, marble floors for mountain views, but the bargain was fair. As summer turned into fall, I noticed something else. The bitterness that once lived in my chest, the shame from that restaurant scene, the sting of Marissa's words began to fade. Not disappear, but soften like scars that stop aching with the weather. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace, Ethan asked, "Do you ever regret it? Grandpa cutting Mom out of the will?" I stirred the flames with the poker, watching sparks fly. "No. I regret that she forced my hand, but not the decision itself. A will is not about blood, it's about trust. And she lost mine. Ethan swallowed hard, then nodded. I understand. I reached over and clasped his hand. You'll carry on the family, Ethan. Not through money or property, but through the way you live. Don't let bitterness rot your heart. Learn from my mistakes and from hers. He squeezed my hand back. I promise. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, carrying away the last remnants of that courtroom war. My daughter had chosen distance, but my grandson had chosen loyalty. And at 84, I finally understood sometimes you can't save both. You can only choose where your love will grow and where it will not. When winter finally loosened its grip on the Rockies, I felt something loosen in me too. The court battle was behind me, the shouting and the shame had faded into echoes. What remained was my choice, and the legacy I would leave behind. One quiet afternoon, I asked Ethan and Fiona to sit with me at the kitchen table. The air smelled of pine wood and coffee. Papers lay neatly stacked before me, the new will Harvey had drafted after the case was settled. I want you both to hear this from me, I began. I've decided where what little I own will go when I'm gone. Ethan shifted uneasily. Grandpa, you don't have to. I do, I interrupted gently. Because clarity is a gift. Too many families tear themselves apart because of silence. I won't let that happen again. I opened the folder. My voice was steady. The cabin, the savings account, whatever else remains, all of it will go to you, Ethan. You've shown me loyalty when others showed me greed. You've stood by me not because of what I have, but because of who I am. That is the truest inheritance a man can hope for. Ethan's eyes glistened, but he nodded firmly. I'll honor it, Grandpa. I'll honor you. I turned to Fiona. And you? You've given me more than medicine. You've given me companionship, respect, and a home that doesn't feel so empty. I can't leave you money, but I hope you know I leave you gratitude that no paper could ever hold. She smiled softly, her freckles glowing in the afternoon light. That's worth more than gold, Roland. I closed the folder. I've lived long enough to learn that money exposes character. It shows who loves you and who only loves what you can give. Marissa chose one path. Ethan, you chose another. And I choose peace. We sat in silence, the only sound the crackle of the fire. My chest was heavy from emphysema, but my spirit felt light, freer than it had in years. Later that evening, I stepped onto the porch with my cane looking out at the lake painted in hues of orange and violet. I whispered a prayer the way I had whispered prayers after Gwendolyn passed, the way I had prayed before walking into that courtroom. Lord, thank you for showing me that even when family fails, faith holds. Thank you for giving me strength to stand tall when others tried to cut me down. And thank you for reminding me that dignity is never something you give away, it's something you keep, no matter the cost. The water rippled as if to answer. Ethan came out and stood beside me. You know, Grandpa, he said one day when I'm old, I hope I'll be as strong as you. I chuckled. Strength isn't in the fists, son. It's in the spine. It's in refusing to bow when the world tells you to bend. And it's in knowing who holds you up when you feel like you'll fall. He nodded, taking in every word. At 84, I realized something simple but powerful. You cannot always choose how long you live, but you can choose how you live. With dignity, with faith, with love for those who truly stand by you. So if you're listening to my story right now, Let me ask you, would you have stood your ground the way I did even against your own blood? If you're still here with me, type 1 in the comments. I want to know you're walking this road with me. Because in the end, my daughter may have lost her claim to my house, but I gained something greater, freedom. And I leave this world not with bitterness, but with peace.